Hi there. Well, I'm certainly no TV pundit, but if your Netflix viewing isn't organised for Monday evening, you might want to drop on and watch the BBC documentary with Freddie Flintoff. So this is on at 9 o'clock on Monday evening, and obviously it will also be on iPlayer to catch up. And it discusses Freddie Flintoff's battle with bulimia. And it's something that a lot of people that have known him as the global superstar in sport that he is and in the world of cricketing have had no idea about his mental health struggle with the illness. But what's really interesting about this is I think it's just another opportunity to challenge the myths that sit around the world of eating disorders, and particularly around that sort of gender bias, because whatever we try and change in the day-to-day narrative around eating disorders, it's still very much the kind of common perception that eating disorders is something that affects predominantly teenage girls who want to look skinny. So that's to some extent why I always get, not necessarily excited, but quite relieved or pleased when you get someone like a film star like Chris Eccleston, who came out recently and discussed his battle with anorexia, or even Ed Sheeran, who didn't talk about an eating disorder, but he did talk about disordered eating relationships. I think sometimes it's really helpful when we hear from people like that in a position as A, a male, and B, as people that are really quite successful. And then we have to challenge what we think about the world of eating disorders and those that suffer from this terrible mental health illness. So what do I hope from this documentary on the BBC? Well, I really hope it just makes people gather a little bit more empathy and understanding. If it just makes people think, oh, do you know what? Actually, I wouldn't have known from the look of that person that they had an eating disorder. And perhaps in my mind, I did have the sort of long-standing perception that it does affect females of a particular age, and that it is always somebody in an emaciated looking body, and that I would always know if my son, my daughter, my brother, my sister, my colleague, my friend, my wife had an eating disorder. If it achieves that, then I think it will be a massive thing. It's just one more thing that helps us change that narrative, get people talking about it, get people discussing the way that we view mental health generally, but really that kind of that uncomfortable world about eating disorders. And I would probably go so far as to say that bulimia, in some cases, people that suffer from bulimia tend to feel more ashamed and stigmatized than even those with a restrictive eating disorder might. And maybe that's to do with the secretive behaviors around binging and purging. So if by witnessing someone on the sort of global level of fame that Freddie Flintoff has, if witnessing him talking about his illness and how he got through it, if that really does help challenge some of the thoughts that sufferers have, but also those that have always thought that they understood what an eating disorder was, or thought that they ought to know more about it, if it achieves that, then I think it will be a really good thing. Just a bit of note of caution, I suppose. I would say if you're somebody that is battling with an eating disorder, or you're in recovery and you don't feel ready to immerse yourself in a documentary that talks about the very illness that you are still trying to get on top of, you can make that choice. You don't need to watch that. If it's not going to make you comfortable, don't do it. All about self-preservation. But for those of you that do want to watch it, then if you have particular observations and you want to share them with Wednesday's Child, please do get in touch. Thanks a lot.